Hello everybody, welcome to the Eternal Spoiler Breakdown. Defiance is releasing tomorrow it is going down for maintenance at 7 a.m. MST, which is going to be 6 a.m. for me in PST. So we will be streaming basically probably starting around 8 or 9, and we will be going pretty much all day. It's going to be delightful. But there have been a ridiculous number of spoils dumped for the previous day, and the last time that this happened I did like an hour-long video and I almost completely destroyed my voice, and generally I don't want to do that again. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to talk about one specific element of the spoilers for today, and we're going to do the card breakdown tomorrow and start talking about cards basically individually by color and actually breaking down the set. So let's talk about Smugglers, Contraband, and the black market, because, oh my goodness, many good things have just been released in terms of spoils. So the last mechanic or big announcement to be shown with this whole Defiance release is new merchants, and this one is the first of these. So let's take a quick look at what we're looking at and basically how it breaks down. These are extremely powerful hybrid merchants with a particular drawback that I think is really interesting, and it's going to lead to some very powerful and cool cards. Or just cool play, basically. So this is Great Valley Smuggler. Great Valley Smuggler is a 3/3 for 3 in Elysian with +1/+1 when you have a relic. So typically it's going to be a 4/4 for 3. It's not too hard to get relics in Aurelian in particular, so having a relic seems fairly likely if you're going to be playing Great Valley Smuggler. Summon, you get to choose either a time or a primal card from your black market. Now, a black market is very similar to a market, and specifically you may already have a black market if you've built your market into your deck. See, if you build a market with no cards in it that actually exist in your deck, so if for example you aren't grabbing that 4th copy of a Mask of Torment to play for your Xenon deck, or if you're not like trying to play like the 4th copy of some particular thing that's very important to you, and instead you're just piling in like an answer or a power or a number of other things that might be helpful, like a banner that isn't otherwise a 4 of in your deck. If you just have 5 cards that don't exist in your deck, then your market is a black market. So Great Valley Smuggler and the other 4 of this set and this cycle basically are going to like allow you to just play out really powerful merchants that can also search for a variety of different cool answers, as long as those answers aren't particular combos or things that you're going to play 7 copies of in your deck. So yeah, black markets are really good. They kind of encourage the play pattern that's really interesting about merchants, which is that they are a sideboard mechanic where you get the thing that's most important to you at the particular time, and you try to build markets that are going to cover a wide variety of bases, while also like sort of decreasing the consistency of like that whole play 7 of your favorite thing. But like if you have a 1 of a card that in some way duplicates an effect that your favorite 4 of actually accomplishes, then there's a lot of value in actually playing a smuggler over a merchant. And yeah, it's something that's pretty important to note. So these cards stand up really well. Like, they all have fairly good stat lines for merchants. They all have really decent benefits for their hybrid colors. Like, they're getting a little bit of something extra. But also, like, as long as you have those 5 unique cards that are just not in your deck, like, you just get cool things out of them. So Great Valley Smuggler, this is probably our common Aurelian merchant and is going to do some pretty good stuff for any sort of relic-based strategy. Like, this is the card that fetches Infinite Hourglass, Sandstorm Scarf, any number of like small, simple 1-drop relics for your big relic deck that has all of the cool new relics in it. There's a ton of good time relics now that do really interesting things. There's one that gives all of your units charge. There's one that, like locks down flyers, one that gives you endurance, one that like basically you can just sacrifice for cool things. So just grabbing relics with Great Valley Smuggler is not a bad idea, but this card can also still pick up Jotun Feast Collar or basically any other thing from like blue that you might need if you want to grab a Permafrost or an Equivocate Plate, if you want to grab some sort of like interesting mono primal card, Smuggler can grab that for you as well. So like overall, like these cards are, I think, more powerful than the current merchants, but the fact that you can't just use them to play a more consistent version of your deck makes them a little bit trickier to run, and it's going to mean that basically there's a lot more variety in a game of Eternal, which, yeah, that's a really, really interesting way to make things happen, and it definitely leads to some cool decision making. And I would say that, like, as far as like these cards go, they're going to be really, really solid in dual colors. This one's pretty interesting for Aurelian in particular, I think. Let's talk about the other ones as well. There are quite a few. All right, so in addition to that one, we've got Red Canyon Smuggler. This is the Recano Smuggler, and it has double damage. It is a 2/3, so this is a pretty solid weapons smuggler, similar to Ixtun Merchant, except that this card can just get completely out of control if it fetches any sort of card that actually gives you really good value. For example, if you're playing a Recano deck that wants to just get a Deep Forge Plate out, Red Canyon Smuggler is so dangerous that it actually has to be killed, unlike, say, an Ixtun Merchant. Like, this is something where it's just like, this card, if it gets a weapon, is out of control, and you're also almost certainly going to have a weapon in your market, and that weapon could be something like Deep Forge Plate or Long Barrel. It could be something big that, like, you just get a really large green unit. You could just grab a Roldan's Fist with this and, like, completely wreck, because the card is going to be like a 9-8, a 9-10 that silences all of your opponent's Valkyrie, but also has double damage. Like, no, there's some hot nonsense that you can get away with Red Canyon Smuggler, and there's a lot of ways that it can just get itself across for damage, including giving itself Overwhelm, giving itself Elder's Feather, giving itself Deep Forge Plate. Basically, like, this card is just ridiculously good at making double damage happen and doing cool things with weapons. So it's got a speciality, and it plays very well with the cards that it is marketing. I think that's actually true of quite a few of these smugglers, but it's an important thing to note about the merchants is that they do tend to play towards a particular type of deck, and they do tend to encourage a particular type of deck in their particular colors. Red Canyon Smuggler is also just, you know, like if you want to grab Torch and Vanquish and you want to grab a bunch of useful spells, or if you want to get very particular things, that's totally fine. Like, this card probably feels really happy just getting an Oath Book or some other card that is just like a simple one of to buff itself up or to make other bad things happen. And you can also grab any number of other exciting things. Like in 3-color, you can use this card to grab a Tavrod in a red, green, purple deck. Like, you can use this card to grab like a Skycrag card in a red, green, blue deck. There's all sorts of weird opportunities with merchants. This one really specializes in weapons, but it's also just like that flexibility of the market opens up so many different possibilities that it's really important to note that aside from it just being good, it also makes your deck better in ways that are really expansive and interesting. Ebon Dune. This is a 2/2 with Ambush, and it's the Xenon Smuggler. Now, Ebon Dune is going to be an interesting one, because this one is basically going to be put in a position where it has to compete with Aurelian Merchant, which was the most powerful merchant, and is still quite strong as far as merchants go. Ebon Dune Smuggler does kill something pretty much the turn he comes out. He can ambush a market card very quickly. I believe the one that was given on the Eternal website is if you just ambush Ebon Dune Smuggler onto a board that is just attacked and then immediately play the marketed 4/2 with Overwhelm and Charge. That's a cool 6 points of damage that you can get across without basically anything bad happening. You can also use him to market any number of other charge units, such as the 2/4 that makes a bunch of sand traps or scorpion traps. You can grab really interesting, like, sort of ambush and charge cards and make bad things happen, or you can use him as a more generalist card that can actually fulfill particular roles and grab at the most important control cards in Xenon. Like, we have a deck, a Greedthorn deck, that plays basically a huge pile of time cards. It would love to run shadow cards in the market, but it doesn't really want to run Kerendon Merchants. Ebon Dune Smuggler fits pretty well in on that, but I would say that this card most aptly synergizes with good removal spells and infiltrate effects and charge effects. So like Ebon Smuggler can, for example, grab a Beast Caller's Amulet. Just having a Beast Caller's Amulet in your market with Ebon Smuggler as a one-of means that you have an opportunity on 3 to play a 2/2, put an amulet on it, and then immediately go in and put like a beast in play. There are really cool tricks that you can play with this card, and lots of interesting space to explore as far as what kind of ambush synergies that you can come up with. Or you can use it as a more generalist merchant, and yeah, that's strong as well. Okay, that gets us to the next one, and we have these a little bit disorganized because there were a lot of spoilers today, and I accidentally saved all of the smugglers with all of the other ones. But we'll find it, I think. Okay, so we got Red Canyon. We got Hidden... We didn't get Hidden Road. Let's talk about Hidden Road. Hidden Road Smuggler is the 3/3 with Lifesteal. This is the Argenport Smuggler, and it summons to give you a Justice or Shadow card from your black market. Now, Hidden Road Smuggler synergizes pretty well with all sorts of combat tricks, because obviously it is a card that allows you to stabilize pretty well. It works pretty well in control lists, because it is something that gets you a lot of life against sort of aggressive decks, while also allowing you to be a more generic market swap card. Like, this card is very, very good at just generating useful things. If we want to use this card to just grab whatever we need out of our market, while also just holding an aggro deck at bay, that's really, really solid. 3-drop, 3/3 with Lifesteal, that's a pretty good stat line. Hidden Road Smuggler has less synergies, I think, than some of the other merchants with the cards that it is marketing for, but it still plays really well with big units, it still plays well with fast spell combat tricks, and of course it's a pretty powerful card in its own right, so it plays very well with those control archetypes. Like, I'd say this card actually has some of the most generalist strength of any of the cards that you can get for your market, and really is a good way to push sort of Justice and Shadow into an interesting control space and do some cool things with this. This one actually might make our Mask of Torment list. I kind of like it. A lot of the things that we are marketing for are usually time cards, but there are also quite a few Shadow cards that we can grab, and if we wanted to include, say, a Harsh Rule or something, and grab like some good green cards as well, then Hidden Road Smuggler could definitely get us there, and that's something that's definitely worth getting excited about. This card seems a lot better than Kerendon Merchant just on face value, and a lot better than Winchester Merchant in the same vein. It's just really powerful, really simple, and a good reward for going into Argenport, and does everything you want it to do as far as like getting control lists going in just the best ways. Okay, so that's Hidden Road, Ebon Dune, Red Canyon, and I'm missing one, which doesn't appear to be here. Let's go ahead and grab it real quick. Brief delay as we get everything fixed up, but that's okay. Red Canyon, Hidden Road, Ebon Dune, Great Valley, and Howling Peak is our last one. This one is really exciting for a lot of different reasons. So Howling Peak is a 2/2. It is our Skycrag Smuggler, and it is a little ridiculous. So this card gives you spell damage. A 2/2 for 3, that your spells get +1 damage, and you can summon it to choose a card from your hand to swap with a fire or primal card in your black market. Now, lots of good cards can go in your black market here. Obviously, the best one is Torch, but it's hard to play Torch in your black market because you typically want 4 of it in your deck. So things that are more likely to go under consideration are cards like Torrential Downpour, Icequake, Decimate, Mortar. You could do Piercing Shot. That one's really particularly strong with extra damage. You could do any number of cards that just kill particular things while also dealing damage. Like if you want to grab some particular card that is like capable of just doing a pile of damage, like there are interesting options. You can grab Signal Flare to deal with a pesky sight by dealing 3 damage directly to it. You can grab lots of cool things and just use them to do direct damage. Howling Peak Smuggler has really good synergy with spells, and most likely if you're playing Howling Peak Smuggler, you're going to have a lot of fast spells in your deck that you can just immediately pick up and deal a bunch of damage to your opponent with. You can grab Obliterate for this and deal 7 damage. You can do like all sorts of hot nonsense. Maybe you don't need to run spells with Howling Peak Smuggler, but the fact that it is so very good to spell-based strategies means that it definitely definitely reinforces that particular strategy in a way that is much better than any of the current spell damage units out there at the moment. Currently, the only good spell damage card is Cloud Snake Harrier, and that one is very deep in blue and a little bit hard to play, and usually doesn't get quite as much leverage as, say, a Valkyrie Enforcer, so it's not usually used very often. Howling Smuggler will be used in a lot of different decks, and as a result, you're going to be able to grab some really interesting cards and use them to do ridiculous hot nonsense. So crazy, crazy fun. It does also increase the damage of all the firebombs that are in your deck by 1, so probably don't play this in a cookbook list, but that's probably not too big a deal. Okay, so those are all the smugglers. All of these cards are very powerful. All of these cards are pushing a different type of market that is less powerful than the current market, but is nonetheless potentially as powerful as the current market. And if you are building the right types of decks, is just certainly good. So smugglers could supplant merchants, or they could compete on even terms with normal merchants against decks that want to do their particular business a lot more consistently. And that's a really good space to be in. Like, these are pushed rares that are going to basically open up just a ridiculous amount of interesting space in markets for people to play around with and people to do cool things with. I've given a couple of suggestions for each of these cards as far as like where their natural synergies tend to lead, but this is just like, it is open season. There is all sorts of interesting territory that you can get into here, and it's just going to be completely nuts when these cards come out, because there's just way too much. Like, there's so many fun sideboards that you can build here, and there's so many different cards that are just totally worth running as one-ofs that oftentimes you weren't able to slot in because you needed that one extra copy of a particular card. These cards really heavily encourage you to not do that, and they do it in a way that is like absolutely worth giving a look at. And I think that, yeah, all of them are going to see play, all of them are very powerful, and all of them should make their respective decks into really fun powerhouses. So we'll see what all ends up happening with them. Lots of cool stuff available. Hopefully we'll see if we can do some good stuff with them. Like, you can grab all sorts of interesting things. So yeah. All right, so those are our smugglers, but what is a smuggler without contraband? This is not, as I was suspecting. We did hear an announcement about cargo and contraband earlier, but these are not actually market-specific abilities. They are, instead, extremely good cards that are just generically good in the particular colors that they are run in, which is the 5 different color pairings of Defiance, or rather, the 5 different color trios of Defiance. So, we already know that all of the color trios are going to be named after a particular faction, and it is in fact the merchant factions, the Kerendons, the Aurelians, the Ixtun, and the Geneve and Kerendon, Aurelian, Ixtun, Geneve, and I've lost it. Well, we'll come around to it. Winchest, that's it. Okay, so, but yeah, so like probably that's what we're gonna stick with. I don't think people are gonna go for vision and ambition and all of the like sort of listings on the power cards, just because those names are a little bit harder to rectify while also like keeping them separate in your head from impulse and chaos and all of the other like faction names. Like, they're just a little too generic. We're looking for like sort of a good word, so I'm pretty sure that Kerendon's probably going to be the name that sticks for the faction trio. We'll see. Certainly, like, whatever Eternal people are prepared to call it, like, that's what we'll adopt, but I'm guessing that we're just going to be calling each of these factions after the merchants and the cargo. So here's Kerendon Cargo. Kerendon is our Time, Justice, Shadow faction trio, and the cargo draws a Time Sigil, a Justice Sigil, or a Shadow Sigil from your deck, so it's a Seek power that only works in those 3 colors, which is not a bad deal for a Seek power. Like, as far as things go, that's totally fine. However, it has a transmute ability, which is that if you get the influence necessary to play all of your cards in these particular setups, then you get to make Kerendon Contraband and turn this spell from a Seek power into something else. That card is a Discover card. So this card costs all of the influence necessary that you just got from transmuting. You'll always be able to cast it because, like, basically, if you can't cast it, it's a Seek power. But it says, 1 cost, choose between a random time card, a random justice card, and a random shadow card to create and draw. So this is the Discover mechanic from Hearthstone, and as far as Hearthstone's mechanics goes, Discover is, like, their best mechanic. I would say, like, by far. Like, this is a really cool mechanic that actually plays well with random abilities and gives you interesting choices to make, and then allows you to use those choices in a way that impacts the board in a pretty fair-minded manner. Kerendon Contraband will give you your choice of 3 cards from the factions that you are playing. You will get 3 different random cards to pick from, and then you have to decide exactly which of them is right for you. This is always a fun minigame. Like, it's really interesting to decide exactly what card is going to be the best. Sometimes you get offered something that's just really, really good, and that's just an exciting opportunity. But typically, like, this card is still paying 1 extra for something that is going to be a little bit random and maybe not as good as whatever's in your particular deck. However, since this card doubles as a Seek power and it fixes your own power, you're typically going to be running 4 of these in any deck that is of 3 colors, and then you're going to be getting extra value from those decks whenever you're at the point that you can actually play this influence and get yourself into a good situation. If you're playing like a really, really deep influence deck, something like Triple Time, Triple Shadow, Double Justice, for example, you know, those decks exist, I hear. we might play those decks pretty commonly. You can still use the Contraband to grab the Triple Time or the Triple Justice and just fix for that, and try not to actually activate that influence until you are at the point where you're feeling comfy enough to basically run out the Contraband and use it as a way to grab a particular card. Or you can get greedy and you can go specifically for the Contraband. This is a pretty strong variance effect, but it is also a fairly controllable variance effect. There's a reason why this effect is a good mechanic in Hearthstone as opposed to most of Hearthstone's very bad random mechanics. Like, this is a very fun card. It's going to be a lot of fun to play. Like, Discover is lovely, and this is just a good thing to have in the game. Like, overall, I think that as long as we're doing this in small amounts and we're doing this in, like, currently this is going to be like something that you're going to be sampling pretty frequently, but something that is only going to be happening if you build the deck around that idea. Yeah, I think this is going to be something where the Contraband is going to be very helpful and also a lot of fun to play. This card is really powerful. It might be better than Seek Power, and Seek Power was already a really, really good card. So this is our new pushed power card for the game. Like, it's not tokens, it's these, and the Kerendon Contraband are rares, but like, overall I would say that these are like really good fixers. They're going to give us some good options. They're pretty nuts in draft. Like, if you get them in draft, you're really happy with them. A random card is just very, very good, and the ability to fix into your colors is extremely strong. You should basically almost first pick these, not quite because they are Seek powers, but I would say that overall, like, this card just provides too much value to your color pairings and to your fixing. Like, you're going to be picking these in colors that aren't even yours because they're really quite decent. So as long as you can fix for at least one color that's yours, something like Kerendon Contraband feels really, really good. Okay, so that's the Contraband all play exactly the same, but we're going to show off the art for each of them because the art for each of them is very good. You may have noticed that Kerendon Cargo is a set of apples, and Kerendon Contraband is what's hidden underneath those apples. The paired art for each of these is also available. Let's go ahead and show them off in their pairs, because each of them are pretty cool. Aurelian Cargo into Aurelian Contraband. We know that Aurelia is the relic-themed set, so it makes sense that the Aurelian Cargo would, in fact, have that lovely little gem in it, and yeah, get us some cool stuff there. This is probably the worst art of the 5, but it's still very good. I really like this paired art. It's just a lot of fun. The Windchest Cargo is our lovely merchant with his own special hat. The hat contains writs and particular seals and useful, fun contraband from Argenport, which, yep, that's pretty delightful and also very in keeping with Argenport's and the whole, like, sort of Winchest feel of, like, cheating the law and also, like, sort of using the law to your advantage. I think that is quite good. The justice system. Okay. So the next one is Genève. Genève is an ice sculpture or a crystal sculpture that contains lots of valuable gems in it. Perhaps our Genève tricolor pairing will have a lot of synergy with high power cards and like basically just generating lots of extra wealth, but who knows? This is going to be pretty crazy. And the last two are we got the Aurelian, that's Howling Peak, the Ixtun, which hilariously enough includes guns, and then the Contraband is bullets. Although those look like some pretty nasty bullets, and they are in fact bullets made entirely out of raw shiftstone. Which, yeah, that's fun and ridiculous, and a lovely looking card. I'm pretty excited by this. Basically, like the handguns appear to be hiding tank shells, and that's pretty fun. Okay, so that's Ixtun, Genève, Winchest. We got the last one, and it looks like I might be missing one as before, so hold on one moment while we go fetch it. So the last card that we are going to spoil today is, or not so much spoil today, maybe we actually did spoil them all. Kerendon. No, yeah, we spoiled them all. I'm just a crazy person. So, those are our contrabands, our cargo, and our merchants. There were a lot of other cool cards spoiled today, many of which were just ridiculous exciting legendaries, many of which were really exciting and powerful commons and uncommons that are going to make relic matters quite a thing. I was talking about relic control earlier. There are some really good relic control cards in Aurelian that have been spoiled for today. There's also a lot of other exciting stuff, really powerful rare green card that's going to do some nonsense. We're going to be breaking all of that down very soon, and I'm going to be doing an all-day stream for the new set tomorrow when it comes out. So look forward to that, and I'm looking forward to it as well. I'm not going to cover the rest of the spoilers because then this video will be an hour and a half long instead of what I'm guessing is getting close to 30 minutes. But we have some of the really, really pushed powerful cards spoiled, and we know that this set is going to change everything once again in a really exciting way. And yeah, I am just psyched for Defiance, you guys. Let's see it. This will be out a couple of hours before the downtime. The downtime will last a couple of hours, potentially a little more than that. And then we will be streaming, we will be recording, we will be brewing, and all of the ridiculous nonsense will be happening. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to subscribe and notification bells and all of that stuff. I have a Patreon. But anyways, have a really good night, everyone. And tomorrow, I will see you for some eternal Defiance. Cheers.